RT is sitting down with world-renowned scholar, linguist, author, and MIT professor, Noam Chomsky. Professor Chomsky, thank you very much for taking time to speak with RT.
Glad to be with you.
The first issue I want to speak with you about is the recent clashes that have taken place on Wall Street between Americans who are turning out to demonstrate and police officers. From what I read, you recently sent a message to support the activists of this group called Occupy Wall Street. You've called them courageous and honorable. Can you talk to me about your take on Occupy Wall Street?
Well, Wall Street was just a shorthand for the financial institutions. The banks are bigger and richer than before. Corporate profits are reaching record levels, and unemployment is at about the level of the Great Depression, real unemployment. These people are saying, no, let's blame the culprits and the institutions behind them. So fiscal policies like taxation, rules of corporate governance, deregulation, and so on. It does set in motion a vicious cycle which is getting worse and worse in New York. So walk down the streets and you can see it. Very serious poverty. On the other hand, phenomenal wealth, right side by side. Very much like a third world country. It's what you see if you go to sub-Saharan Africa. Meanwhile, infrastructure is collapsing, schools are collapsing, and all of that increases it keeps the cycle going and, in fact, rising. Well, it's about time for some protest.
What may be new in the coming year for the 2012 election is that many, including yourself, have speculated and assumed that the campaign spending for the U.S. election in 2012 will exceed $1 billion
for each
candidate. That is a massive amount.
It'll probably be much bigger than that. And where does that come from? Well, basically, a lot of it comes from financial institutions. In fact, if you look at the 2008 election, what swung Obama, what gave him the election, was primarily financial institution contributions. They preferred him to McCain. They expected to be paid back, and they were. And the next one will be even worse. Incidentally, that's only a part of it. In parliamentary systems, including our own up till maybe 20 years ago, positions of influence in a functioning parliamentary system, let's say a chair of a committee, comes from, principle at least, from experience, seniority, legislative contributions, and so on. That's gone. Now they're bought. If you want to become chair of a committee in the House or the Senate, you have to pay off the party. You have to pay for it. Where do you get the money to pay for it? Same pockets. So it provides even more influence to the already overwhelming influence of concentrated capital. So it's harder and harder to distinguish between the elected officials and economic concentration. It never was easy to distinguish, I should say. This is not something novel, but now it's reaching an extreme level.
Well, what's left of America's democratic system if this is the process that has been cemented in place? I mean, what is really left if from every angle there's these financial influences?
Well, just take a look at public opinion. They'll tell you about 2/3 of the public thinks that the entire Congress ought to be thrown out.
But that doesn't mean that it's going to happen.
No, but it means that the system isn't working, and the public knows it. The popularity of favorability rating for Congress is in single digits. President not much higher, and the same runs across all other institutions. It's a very widespread sense that everything is going wrong. That tells you the democratic system is just not functioning. Now, in fact, I don't want to suggest that this is totally new. So you go back a century, and you can still predict throughout all this period pretty well the outcome of elections by campaign funding. But there are degrees, and now it's gotten extreme. The levels to which the U.S. has departed from other capitalist societies are pretty remarkable.
You released a book recently called 9/11, Was There an Alternative?, focusing on the U.S. assassination of Osama bin Laden and the continuity, you say, between George W. Bush and Barack Obama.
The killing of Osama bin Laden is an interesting case. It was done in such a way as to infuriate the Pakistanis, which is extremely dangerous. It's the most dangerous country in the world. I go into it. But they have a professional army committed to the sovereignty of Pakistan. Pakistanis were already overwhelmingly anti-American. This shoots it through the stratosphere. The army is bitterly angry, not only at the invasion of the country and the murder of someone on their soil, but also that they're being pressured, forced to take part in an American war in Afghanistan. Some of the actually conservative military analysts who wrote about the bin Laden assassination, I quoted some of them, pointed out quite accurately that there's a shift between Bush's policies and Obama's on this. Bush's policy was to kidnap people, whatever you thought about them, take them to Guantanamo or Bagram or some other torture chamber and try to extract some information out of them. We know what that was like. I don't have to describe it. Obama's policy is just to kill them. They're killing them all over the world. It's targeted assassination campaigns. You don't even kidnap them and torture them, just kill them. And the bin Laden assassination was a case in point. It's hard to remember, but there used to be a system of justice in the West which said that a person is a suspect until he's proven guilty. Up until then, he's a suspect. He's innocent until proven guilty. Well, that's gone. Now you just kill them if you think they're guilty. So he was apprehended, no resistance. He was alone with his wife, no defense, nothing. Highly trained commandos could certainly have apprehended him. They didn't. They were under orders to murder him and then toss his body into the ocean. Acts that are almost designed in such a way as to increase anger and hatred throughout the Muslim world. In fact, among anybody who's got their eyes open.
You talk about the Obama administration and how the U.S. actions right now could be infuriating the Muslim world, the Arab world. The Obama administration has supported the Tunisians, has supported the Egyptians, has supported the Libyans in the so-called Arab Spring. The Palestinians have officially submitted an application for UN membership and statehood. The U.S. says that they will cast a veto against it if they have to, because they believe that direct negotiations should take place between Palestine and Israel before there's an independent Palestine.
Well, first of all, I have to make a qualification. The United States and its Western allies did not support the Egyptian and Tunisian revolutions. They opposed them. They backed the dictator, and Tunisia was mostly France. It's their colony. Fixed colony in Egypt was the United States and Britain. They supported the dictators until the last minute. And when the army turned against them and it was no longer possible to support them, then they said, okay, democracy is wonderful. And then they moved to try to ensure that the regimes would stay pretty much as they were. And so it's a very old pattern. But putting that aside, it's true that the United States announced that it would cast a veto. For about 35 years, the United States and Israel have been rejecting a political settlement that is supported by virtually the entire world. The Arab League, the Organization of Islamic States, which includes Iran, Hamas supports it. Almost no relevant party disagrees with it, except that the United States and Israel won't let it happen.
How about the fact that Egypt right now and Turkey have really severed their relations with Israel?
See, that's an effect of the Arab Spring. What's happened, there are changes in the world. What's happening is Israel's getting far more isolated, meaning the U.S. is getting far more isolated. For example, a couple months ago, there was a meeting of the oligarchs, people who pretty much own the economy. They warned the government that they better accept something like this resolution, because they said otherwise Israel will be, as they put it, South Africanized, even more isolated, boycotts, refusal to load ships, and so on, and our economy will collapse. Now, it's interesting that Israel's reacting pretty much the way South Africa did. If you look back at the history, by about 1960, We have the records. The South African foreign minister called in the American ambassador and described this to him and said, we don't really care as long as you back us, because you're the one vote that matters. And that's how it worked out. Right through by the 1980s, UN embargo, corporations were pulling out, sanctions all over, boycotts. They were doing fine. The Reagan administration was backing them. And as long as the U.S. was supporting him, nothing happened. Then the U.S. withdrew support, and almost instantly apartheid collapsed.
So you're saying it's in Israel's best interest, and possibly the U.S.'s, to allow this Palestinian UN membership and statehood?
Look, I thought for 35 years that same
story
is now that it's been for almost 40 years. There's a choice between security and expansion. Very clear choice. Now, Israel is like other states. It's preferring, since the early 70s, it's had a choice between security and expansion. It can have peace, but not with expansion into the territories, which incidentally is recognized to be criminal by everyone, including Israel. They can get away with it as long as the most powerful state in the world backs them, and as long as Europe goes along. Europe is remarkably cowardly. They may not like this, but they don't like to step on the toenails of the masters, so they go along. So you notice the quartet has backed the United States. They picked Tony Blair, I don't have to comment on him, but they might as well have picked George Bush to bring the message, do what the United States tells you. Stop this nonsense about statehood and go back to negotiations. That's where we now stand. It's up to the people in the advanced industrial countries to compel their governments to go along with the world.
Professor Chomsky, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah.